Charlie,
Yeah.
one of my favorite lines from you is you want to hire the guy with the IQ of 130 that thinks it's 120, and the guy with an IQ of 150 who thinks it's 170 will just kill you.
You must be thinking about Elon Musk.
Hi, Charlie. Cameron Hamidi from San Diego. I was happy to see you at this meeting, turn 90, now you're 95, and I hope
You think you're happy, think about it the way I feel. We never thought we could get really useful information on all subjects, like Jen Kramer tends to have. And
Hi, Charlie.
yeah.
In spite of being partners for so long, why is Warren so much richer than you?
Well, he got an earlier start. He was probably a little smarter. He worked harder. There are not a lot of reasons. Why was Albert Einstein poorer than I was? And this man has this wonderful horse. And it's just a marvelous horse. Got an easy gait and good looking and everything. It just works wonderfully. But also occasionally just gets so he's dangerous and vicious and causes enormous damage and trouble and breaks arms and legs for his rider and so on. And he goes to the vet and says, "What can I do about this horse?" And the vet says, "That's a very easy problem and I'm glad to help you." He says, "What should I do?" And the man says, "The next time your horse is behaving well, sell it." Well, think of how immoral that is. And haven't I just described what private equity has to do? Garen always loved the story about the guy who had been a total miscreant all his life, and he died, and the minister said, "Now is the time in the funeral ceremony when somebody says something nice about the deceased." And nobody came forward, and nobody came forward, and nobody came forward. Finally, one guy stood up, and he said, "Well," he said, "his brother was worse." Well, you can laugh, but there are people like that. When Harry Cohn died here, the saying was everybody went to the funeral to make sure he was dead. If you take the modern world, where people are trying to teach you how to come in and trade actively in stocks, well, I regard that as roughly equivalent to trying to induce a bunch of young people to start off on heroin. It is really stupid. And when you're already rich, to make your money by encouraging people to get rich by trading. And then there are people on the TV, another wonderful place. And they say, "I have this book that will teach you how to make 300% a year. And all you have to do is pay for shipping, and I will mail it to you." How likely is it that a person who had suddenly found a way to make 300% a year would be trying to sell books on the internet to you? And it's ridiculous. Warren always said it's probably always a mistake to marry for money, and it's really stupid if you're already rich. And the answer is I'm right and they're wrong. And that's why it's worked for me and not for them. And now the question is, do you want to be more like me or more like them? You can see I'm not trying to make your morning. I'm just trying to describe things the way they are. The first rule in fishing has always been fish where the fish are. And the second rule of fishing has always been don't forget rule number 1. Peter Coffin is always telling me if the crooks only knew how much money you could make by being honest, they'd all behave differently. Warren has a wonderful saying I like. He says, if you take the high road, it's never crowded. Here's an apocryphal story that is very instructive. A young man comes to visit Mozart. And he says, "Mozart," he says, "I want to write symphonies." And Mozart says, "How old are you?" And the man says, "I'm 23. And Mozart says, "You're too young to write symphonies." And he says, "But Mozart," he says, "you were writing symphonies when you were 10 years old." Mozart says, yes, but I wasn't asking other people how to do it. Now there's another Mozart story. Here's the greatest musical talent maybe that ever lived. And what was his life like? Well, he was bitterly unhappy and he died young. That's the life of Mozart. What the hell did Mozart do to screw it up? To make himself, well, he did two things that are guaranteed to create a lot of misery. He overspent his income scrupulously. That's number one. That is really stupid. And the other thing was he was full of jealousies and resentments. If you'll overspend your income and be full of jealousy and resentments, you can have a lousy, unhappy life and die young. All you've got to do is learn from Mozart. Another thing that people do that I regard as amazing is they build these enormous mausoleums. I think they figure they want people to walk by that mausoleum and say, gosh, I wish I were in there.
My name's JD. I'm from Phoenix. Charlie, I read a lot of the Stoic philosophers last year, Epictetus, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius.
Well, I can see why you would.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be Stoic about.
Agreed. And as I gleaned lessons from them, there was one name that kept coming to mind, and that is Munger. So I wonder, can you talk about...
Some people think Marcus Aurelius was all right. Fade in, fade out. We have a different kind of a legislature now. I just want all those old crooks and lobbyists and prostitutes back. I just wish there was one change in Peter Kaufman. Peter Kaufman has made me adored in India and China. I wish the hell he could do more for me in Los Angeles. My father had this best friend and client, and he also had this other client who was a big blowhard, and he was always working for the big blowhard, and he wasn't ever working for his wonderful client whom I admired. And I said, why do you do this? And he said, Charlie, you idiot. He says, the big blowhard is an endless source of legal troubles. He's always in trouble, overreaching and misbehaving and so forth. Whereas Grant McFadden treats everybody right, the employees, the customers, everything. And he gets involved with some psychotic, he walks over there and makes a graceful exit immediately. So a man like that doesn't need a lawyer. And my father was trying to teach me something, and it really worked. I spent my whole life trying to be like Grant McFadden. And I want to tell you, it works. It really works. Peter Kaufman is always telling me if the crooks only knew how much money you could make by being honest, they'd all behave differently. Warren has a wonderful saying I like. He says, if you take the high road, it's never crowded. Oh.
Could you please comment on proposed legislation in Washington to restrict or tax share buybacks?
To tax whom, what?
Share buybacks.
Oh, well... Rick tells a story about an old Irishman that used to steal from the church and drunk all the time. And when he's dying, the priest asked him to renounce the devil. And he said, I can't do that because in my condition I shouldn't offend anybody. And I don't think I should. If you get me started on politicians, I may be impolitic. So let's go to another subject.
I heard about
Seemed like
building.
a good idea at the time.
What's the key to their success then? The apartment house is doing well.
By the way, that phrase, it seemed like a good idea at the time, came to me from a man I knew many years ago. In 5 minutes between trains, he managed to conceive an illegitimate child by somebody he met in the bar car. And my father was asked by the young man's father, he had a nice wife and 3 children, what on hell were you thinking about? And you know what the young man said? It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Charlie and Peter Kaufman, I don't have a question. I just want to thank you both for putting together Poor Charlie's Almanac. It has been an incredibly foundational book in my life, and has really helped inflect my thinking on many different things. So thank you both very much for your work on that.